Hello, this is Jeffrey Milburn, and this is the Omni Art Salon number 291. It is a wonderful conversation I had with Ann Archer Butcher, award-winning author of the new spiritual classic, Divine Guidance, Our Divine Birthright. Ann is a producer and writer, wife and mother, businesswoman, and member of the Eckankar clergy, who speaks at international gatherings about near-death, out-of-body, and spiritual experiences, and the unique spiritual toolkit that the Eckankar teachings provide seekers of all kinds. In our conversation today, Ann speaks beautifully about several of the many miraculous and inspiring experiences described in her book that have provided her with a profound sense of connection to the divine source of all life in both subtle and dramatic ways. In addition, Ann shares some great practical tools useful to anyone who is interested in fine-tuning their own sense of divine connection to life in many new ways. Ann will be appearing at the upcoming Eckankar Worldwide Seminar on the weekend of October 24th through the 26th at the Minneapolis Convention Center on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. in Auditorium 3. Links to Eckankar, Ann's book, and public appearances, and the Eckankar Worldwide Seminar are in the show notes on our website at omniartsalon.com. And so now, without further ado, the Omni Art Salon proudly presents Divine Guidance, Our Divine Birthright, with Ann Archer Butcher. Well, Ann, thank you so much for joining me today on the Omni Art Salon.
I'm delighted to be with you, Jeffrey. I'm excited about the opportunity. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. And, I've been enjoying your book for probably the last 4 to 6 months and reading your different stories. It was very interesting coming up with ideas of what to talk to you about because there's so much in there. But for my audience that's all over the world, I think they'd like to hear just a little bit about who you are and what it was like when you were growing up.
Well, I'm from the perspective of being a young girl. I grew up in South Carolina, and that's a very conservative part of the world. And I was a Southern Baptist, and my family at least. And yet there was some burning desire that I had as a little kid, and I remember this back almost about the time I'm 3 years old. My mother continued to tell it for years, but I wanted to talk to God. I believed that I had forgotten something very important and that God knew the answer. And my mother thought it was both funny, hilarious from the perspective of I would ask the farmer down the road, if he knew how to talk to God, because I was serious about trying to get in touch with God. And she also thought that it was a sign that I was connected, and she wanted me to continue that. So she told my sister and me from a very early age that she believed that all children had the ability to talk to God and that we lose it, and that we needed to try and hold on to that. And I remembered it, and I thought it was very important. So I have always been seeking that, both from that inner drive, as you say, Jeffrey, What was I like as a kid? I had this inner drive to talk to God. I thought of myself as a very spiritual person from my earliest memories. But, of course, I also, like all kids, I wanted to blend into my neighborhood and, be a regular kid. And at the same time, I wanted to always remember to ask, to stay in touch, to keep this inner guidance, to keep this conversation alive. It was a long time before I ever felt I had gained any sense of that, but that was my driving force on a spiritual level my whole life, was to have this closer connection to God, that it was truly a conversation.
Do you recall any particular great breakthroughs where you felt like you were piercing through that veil of materiality that binds so many of us when we're young?
I remember a breakthrough, and it was a very serious moment for me. But I was again a little kid. But I remember thinking that I could ask God for signs, and I believe that we really can. But the attitude that I was using, because I'm a little tiny kid, was that it was a game. And think maybe I'm 5 years old at the time I'm telling you this story, and I'm lying in my bed at nap time, which I always hated. I didn't like to go to sleep in the middle of the day, and so I would use it as time to think and reflect, and I try not to go to sleep, which my mother hated, but that's what I did. And so I'm lying there in my bed by force, and I'm watching curtains, these beautiful little curtains that had circus animals on them, and they're kind of floating in the breeze. There's not much wind, but the window is open, and I said, "Dear God, if you hear me, make the curtains blow really hard in the window so I know you're there," because you could see, the wind wasn't blowing hard. And all of a sudden, almost instantaneously, the curtains billowed out and hung in the air for the longest time. But inwardly, I heard, "This is not a game. This is not a game." And I knew spiritually that I would be breaking the spiritual law if I continued to have that same attitude. I felt apologetic. So I changed my attitude to one of more reverence, and I remember being a little kid doing that. The next thing that happened, though, was that my inner guidance did get stronger at that point, because I tried to have this conversation all the time, and one day I woke up and I heard something I did not want to hear. I heard, "Your father is about to die." So this isn't about trying to control life, because I wasn't allowed to control anything. It was just understanding and being in rapport and knowing what's going on. So I'm a little kid now, I'm 7 or 8 years old, and I hear, "Your father is about to die. His death will bring manifold blessings into your life." I don't want to hear this. I don't even know what the word manifold means.
Wow.
I don't want any blessings. I just want my father. And went on saying, "It will be a long time before you understand this, but it will be a very important moment in your life." And, I started screaming and crying, and my mother came running, and she said, "What is it? What is it?" And I said, "My daddy." And she said, "Is he dead?" Just as the phone rang, and we heard my father had fallen, and he had died instantly in construction. He was working, and he had fallen and died. And my mother even took that opportunity, bless her heart, to remind me that this ability to hear is a gift from God, and that we should hold on to it, and that I have to listen and not turn away from it just because I don't like to hear what I heard. And so, that stuck with me, Jeffrey. It really, what you learn as a kid really matters, and that stuck with me.
That's amazing. And, how many children, how old were you when this happens? Did you
7.
say 7 years old? I mean, did that make you feel like you were really different than other children?
No. I mean, I thought we were all having this relationship with God. I could tell my sister wasn't as much as me. I could tell she was more worldly than I was, but she was also a world-class mathematician from the time she was really young. She was a gifted mathematician. And people knew it at a very young age. She started excelling in school and went through all of her classes on every level as a genius level. So I couldn't compare myself with my sister at all, because she had her own world going on. But with other kids, I assumed they had this relationship with God. They went to church, so I didn't think that I was different. I still don't think that I'm different, and I think that that is really important for people to understand the book, Inner Guidance, Our Divine Birthright. I'm saying it's our divine birthright, because we all have this ability. It is as if the wisest person in the world is sitting on your shoulder, whispering to you about your life. Not big philosophical concepts, because that might happen too, but these minutiae that really matter, like not that way, this way. Not that man, but this man. Listen to him. Go there. Talk to this one. Do that. That woman can help you. Those things really do matter, and they can be these vast turning points in our lives if we have the ability to listen, and we pay attention. And that's kind of what the book is about. We all have the ability. How do we hone in on it? How do we turn the volume up? how do we keep ourselves in that state where we can be receptive to that inner guidance? Because what it ultimately leads to, the benefit that it leads to, is that we can have our highest and greatest destiny fulfilled. We can live at our highest and greatest potential. And I believe that's the only way we get to do it. That's the only way we get to do it. And to me, that's something that, who would want to turn that down? You have the opportunity to live at your highest and greatest destiny, highest, greatest potential. Who wouldn't want that?
Absolutely. And you've told so many different stories in your book that demonstrate different ways the guidance has come through. And one of the ones that, of course, is quite well known at this point is the story of the dolphins. Can you kind of reiterate that story for our listeners, just so they have an idea of what it taught you?
Of course, I'd be happy to. Already some major things were happening in my life when the dolphin story occurred. And I had been really questioning the faith of my childhood, because I had begun to have such big, enormous spiritual experiences that I was asking God to really teach me truth. And part of that was I wanted to understand that there really is an interconnectedness to all life. Now, by that, what I meant was that we're not separated from God, that we're not really separated from each other, that certainly not like the existentialists believed, that we're kind of dumped here, or even more than what the existentialists believed, because I was teaching philosophy at the time and I was teaching literature. And I wanted to know that everything was different than it appeared, and that we were all connected, and that all life was connected by love, and that it didn't matter about the faith or the background or the belief, that God was working with everyone. And I was posing that question, and I know it sounds deep and big and philosophical, but to me, what it boiled down to was, am I going to leave the faith of my childhood? And I had stepped in that direction, and I was leaving it behind. And this day, it was Christmas, so that's a very spiritual holiday, right? And I was with my mother on the island where she lived, and the water was cold, but the day was very hot, and I decided I'm going to go swimming in the water anyway because I'm a strong swimmer. I'll warm up when I'm swimming, and I'll just throw myself in the water, posing this question to God, and, let that inner guidance just flow with the water and with the day and the beauty of this moment, and release the tensions and the worry and the doubts, and let the answers come to me. So that's what I was doing that day. And when I went in the water, it was beautiful. People were walking on the beach picking up shells, and just a beautiful island and a beautiful day, and it's Christmas, so there's lots of people there, but there's nobody in the water but me. And once I started swimming, I put my face down and swam really hard. What had happened was I got picked up by a riptide, so as hard and fast as I was swimming, I was pulled out many times faster than that, way, way out, much further than I would ever have gone on my own, by myself, into the water. And as I look back, I realized I'd made a big mistake, and I knew how to get out of a riptide. We'd always been taught you swim laterally to get out of a riptide, and I was preparing to do that, but I realized the shrimp boats were the other thing you were supposed to be concerned about, never to go near the shrimp boats because sharks would come to catch, whatever the leftovers were. And I looked, I don't see any shrimp boats, and I'm thinking, that's a good thing. Good, there's no shrimp boats. And then I realized that's not a good thing. There's no shrimp boats because it's Christmas Day, but that doesn't mean there's no sharks. And these are hungry sharks now because they don't have anything to eat. So I thought I better get the heck out of here. And I looked to decide which way to swim, and I see a shark coming right at me. And by nature, I'm much more of a fighter than he's going to eat me. I didn't want to give up. But, I looked in my memory banks. I don't remember any story ever of hearing someone stood up to a shark and won. So, there's no soft underbelly. There's no poke it in the eyes or, anything like that. But I'm asking inwardly for help, begging for guidance, and at the same time trying to come up with a game plan while I'm watching a shark come right at me. And my inner guidance kicks in, and I am told to turn away. Don't look at the shark coming right at you. Float on your face, bob like a log in the ocean. And I thought what the intent of this guidance was to pretend I'm truly a log and think that somehow the shark was going to think that I'm a log. And I thought, well, maybe by not flailing around that would help, but my heart was pounding out of my chest. So I knew, it's probably going to eat me. And I could just see the headline, "My mom's going to hate this, daughter eaten on Christmas Day."
Dear.
But I don't have any opportunity to question this particular guidance. I have a millisecond to decide if I'm going to do what it says, and I did. I lay face down, turned away from the shark. I at least felt that some sense of peace came to me just by following the guidance. I felt in harmony, and that's one of the tests we can use to see if we feel right when we follow the guidance. We even think about following it. Do we get that sense? And that's a good test. And I did get that sense, but I thought it meant I was just going to die peacefully, not that I was going to be rescued somehow, because I'm out there in the middle of the water all by myself. It's not like the hand of God is going to pick me up by the nape of my neck and rescue me. But that's sort of exactly what then happened. I felt myself hit underneath really hard. It took my breath away, and yet instead of being thrashed and pulled under as I might have expected, I found myself being lifted straight up in the air, and I am skimming over the surface of the water and flying toward the beach, fast as could be. I'm on the back of something, and this floating platform that I'm on, suddenly I fall off of it, and another, bam, I'm hit from underneath, lifts me up. Another floating platform lifts me up, and again I'm flying toward the beach, fast as could be, and then suddenly I see a dolphin emerge right in front of me, and then another and another and another. So they're not just, as you sometimes hear about, surrounding me to protect me, as we have heard even recently in the news that dolphins will do, but they were literally lifting me up. Why? Because I'd made myself into a floating platform for them. Of course, it was easy for them to pick me up, but, who gets to ride on the backs of dolphins to the beach on Christmas Day to an audience of all these people on the beach? And then when they got me there, they surrounded me and did this beautiful thing, round and round and round, and it was just magnificent. And then they did this choreographed dance all around me, and eventually, not easily, not quickly, but after a long time, with me spinning around saying, thank you, and I love you, and feeling that love reciprocated, it was just beautiful. Eventually, they leave. And I felt like, oh my gosh, my questions, my deep questions have so miraculously been answered, and I have been pulled out by a riptide, face down a shark, rescued by dolphins, and then had this blissful moment with them sharing this love with me. And I knew everything was going to change. Everything was going to be different. Life was so much more than I thought it was. And I knew that it was because I was on this path of exploration, whatever it might be, that this was happening. Not because I'm different, but because my search was intense and it was sincere. And that sincerity and desire to connect with God deeply and to really be guided was being met with huge, miraculous answers. Yeah. When I left that spot in the ocean and finished walking to the beach, one woman came running at me and she said, "Do you work with the dolphins?"
I do now.
All right, I thought, well, that is what it looked like, but no, I definitely don't work with the dolphins. And then I said that I said they rescued me from the riptide, Jeffrey, because that's what I really wanted to believe, that there was no shark, that was just a dolphin I had seen. And an old man stepped out of that group on the beach that were watching, and he said, "No, those dolphins saved your life. They saved you from a shark. I saw it coming right at you." And I thought, oh, well, that's what I thought too, that it was really a shark. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to even face what had happened that day. I didn't want to talk to any of those people. They all wanted to talk. I just wanted to go home, crawl under the covers, and hide and say, oh, my gosh, what is happening in life? But, one thing led to the next, and it has been a very, very beautiful adventure.
Amazing story. Love it. And
Thank you.
Something else in the book that I just found absolutely fascinating was your description when you were your early teaching experience, and you were working with the kids with philosophy, and you started writing quotes on the blackboard in your classroom that were just coming to you. And can you tell us that story? I know it's kind of a full story, but it's so amazing, and I just found it very uplifting.
Well, let's do a real short version of that one, and I'll explain it, because I agree it's a really important story to understand the book, because that was the beginning of me really having a bigger awareness of what's going on and how we can all connect with it. One of the things that I was asking every day before every class, because I was teaching literature, which includes a lot of philosophy at the 11th and 12th grade level, I was asking God for guidance about truth, just as I was about the day that I was swimming with the dolphins. But I would say, dear God, teach me truth so that I will know what to teach them. And I wanted that because I was so young. I graduated college at 21. I started teaching immediately. So there I am. I'm teaching philosophy and literature. I have no idea what I really believe. And the kids want to know, what do you believe? I don't know. I really don't know. So I'm asking. And one day I put my hand on the board, and I meant to write a quote by Emerson or Thoreau or whatever, and instead, as I'm sort of watching the kids and writing at the same time as I would try to do to keep my eye on them and keep the class moving along, I looked back at the board, and my hand was writing something completely and totally different than what I intended, and it was as if my hand had a life of its own, and I was stunned. It was like, how on earth did that happen? Now, if it had happened once, that would have been amazing. It got ridiculous because it happened every hour, on the hour, class after class, and I had no idea how it could happen, what was happening, why it was happening. Later I figured out it was that question, dear God, teach me truth, teach me what to teach them. And that I did every hour on the hour. I said that prayer regularly, and I think that's another key. I think we have to be regular and clear about our intent and be very disciplined about doing it on a daily basis. The concept is heaven is one on a daily basis. And in that process, it went on where I sent those quotes because they were unsigned. I didn't know who wrote them. They're just these beautiful quotes. And I sent them away to a research librarian because we didn't have computers, and she writes back and says, well, this is from Aristotle, and this is from Plato, and this is from Socrates, and this one is from the Lost Epistles of Plato. And she's saying, if you have these quotes, how do you happen to have them without the authors? And I basically told her it was a game, and would she go along with it? And she did. And it went on for years. And then eventually we couldn't find the quotes anymore. We could not find where they were coming from. And it was during this time that the whole dolphin thing happened. It was during that time, and it is also during this time that spectacular experience of going into the heavenly world spontaneously when my sister was about to die, that happened during this time. So many significant things were happening in my life. And then eventually one day, a substitute teacher came in during this period where we couldn't find the quotes. The kids were like saying, well, you're writing them yourself. Look at you, you're writing this stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Just because they can't find the author doesn't mean it's mine. I'm just sure of it because I'm a student of language. And, it's not my rhythm or meter or anything. It's not mine. And substitute teacher came in and he took a look around, and he obviously recognized these quotes, and he asked me where I was getting them. And I said I read them somewhere once. I sort of, just made it up in the spare of the moment because I didn't want him to know. So in the spur of the moment, I just make up, that I'm reading it somewhere once and ask him to go to the teacher's lounge and ignore us. But I have to go to the dentist soon. And he's like, no, I just want to observe. And when I came back the next day, I asked the students if he did what he was supposed to do the handouts and so on. And they said no, because I was very protective of the classroom. I mean, a lot of crazy things were happening, and the energy was intense, and the school board had become very suspicious at one point, and then the school board president's son had become National Merit Scholar and gave me credit for why he had suddenly become so brilliant, because the students felt that they were being quickened in the classroom. So I had lots and lots of students in the classroom. And so finally, we're at the point where the substitute teacher has come, and the students say, no, he didn't stick with the curriculum. And I said, well, what did he do? And they said, well, he asked about you the whole time. And I'm like, oh, no. And they said, but he liked you because he left the school during the yearbook, and he went and he brought a gift, and he left it on your desk. And I went and ripped open this package, and there's a letter, and he said, I have heard of these things, but I have never had the opportunity to see anything like this, and I'm so grateful that I did, and I believe you'll find the underlined passages in this book very interesting. He had gone home and brought this book back, underlined the passages that were on the board in front of him, and I look at the title of the book, and it's called Eckankar, Key to Secret Worlds. And I said to the students, well, what on earth is this? Because they're standing there over my shoulders just looking like, what is it? What is it? And I said, who ever heard of this word, Eckankar? What does that mean? And they said, well, let's read the book. And I said, well, apparently we've been transcribing this book. This is what's all over the room. The room looked like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There were quotes hanging everywhere. And yet, how could you? How could we know this material? This is not ancient literature. This is an American writer, Paul Twitchell, and he's writing about something so esoteric. It's clear that I never read this before, because in college I could read, obviously, Aristotle or Socrates or Plato, and maybe my brain memorized those things. I didn't think so, but this made it clear that, nope, there's something different going on. And the students said they thought it was like a portal had opened up in the classroom, and truth was just pouring in because I was asking for it. And it was pouring in on the chalkboards, and this was just part of the truth. And that truth is unsigned, and it exists in this inner world library, and we can access it at any time. In fact, it explains sort of what people have said about when they go to put a patent on something in one part of the world, and on another part of the world, two people completely disconnected from each other trying to put a patent on the very same concept at the very same moment. They both downloaded it at the same time, essentially. And that really is perhaps the key to how that sort of thing works and what was happening in my classroom. But to me, I was just completely blown away. And that opened the door for the exploration of this teaching called Eckankar. And the author, Paul Twitchell, turned out was the modern-day founder of Eckankar. And this was, all miraculous and amazing and beautiful. But I knew that Paul Twitchell was not alive, and that consequently I thought he was like Emerson or Thoreau, a great writer who no longer was alive, and that we just have to glean what we can from what he wrote. But I only had one book, and I only knew about one book. And it was a couple of years later, I left and went to Indiana University. I'd been invited to audit their higher degree program just to be in the classroom, because a lot of stuff was happening in teaching that I was involved in at the time. And suddenly, I had this experience of feeling like I just had to go get a new dress. Now, I know, Jeffrey, you can't appreciate that, but I have had those urgings from time to time, and I wanted to go to my favorite dress shop, this little import store called Lila's, and I didn't even have a car that day, so I got a cab, and in the pouring rain, I went to Lila's, and when I got there weren't any dresses or imports, and there were just books there. And I asked the guy who was there, what were these books? And he said, they're all Eckankar books. And I almost strangled the kid. I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? And he said, there's a seminar this weekend, but this is an Eckankar center. And when I went to the seminar that weekend, I actually walked in just at the moment that substitute teacher, now hundreds of miles away from where I met him, completely different city, he's standing there on the stage, and he's speaking about me. And as I walk in, he's just finishing the part about the classroom, and he said, and the woman I've been telling you about just walked in the door. And I suddenly felt like, gee, gosh, life has gotten so connected, so amazing. It's just almost impossible what was happening. And yet those people turned. They gave me a standing ovation. That's my first moment in exposed to these people who actually know and understand all of these things that were happening to me. And it was, a complete game changer. Life only picked up and got better from there. It was just very powerful, very meaningful to me.
Certainly doesn't get more direct than that, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
And this is, how long ago was that this happened for you?
Well, it was in maybe more than 40 years ago. Don't force me to do the math.
Oh, okay. I'm just to get a perspective, because now it's almost, from your description, it almost sounds like you're going along in your life, you're asking deeper and deeper questions, and all of a sudden there's an investiture from the divine that really pinpoints it with a particular group, Eckankar.
Yeah, with a path for me.
Yes, and all of a sudden it opens up into a different room completely, and literally you walked in the door.
Right. Now, I remember, if you read the book, there's this part where I leave the Christian church, and I left, although the church wasn't answering my questions, and I wasn't satisfied with the knowledge there, I loved the church, and I loved that flow that I felt there. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed the minister that I was associated with at the time. He was really great. And one day I had an inner message, though, in church. This is prior to the experience I just shared with you. And I was told that there's something much greater than this, and you've earned the right to it, and you must stand now and leave the church forever. Mm-hmm. So I immediately go to my minister and said, talk me out of this. I think I've had a spiritual experience, but perhaps it's just, trying to pull me from the church, and it isn't good, and I need your help. And he took me away privately, and he said, oh, Anne, I wish I could go with you. And I said, what do you mean? You're supposed to talk me out of this. And he said, no, I have come to believe there is something much greater than this, but I can't go. This is my flock. This is my career. This is my church. I can't leave it. But you can, and there is something, and I can tell you have had a spiritual experience. You need to go with it. So even in that moment when I would have doubted my guidance, how could I go back to the church after that, Jeffrey? I couldn't, right?
That's pretty clear.
The minister was like, it's a great adventure. Go on it. Go. Don't hold yourself back. And so I was looking for my next step because of that. So when Eckankar was handed to me on a silver platter, no less, I knew this is the next step. But again, I had decided I'd never been a joiner, really. Like, I never joined a sorority. I was very independent-minded, and I decided, well, I will follow this path. I'll study this teaching as long as I stay connected to this great flow that I'm feeling, this energy, connection to divine spirit, because to me, that's what it was all about. It was this flow of energy and connectedness and everything seeming so connected and synergistic and beautiful. That's what I wanted to stay with. And that now has been, as I say, almost 40 years that happened, and I have never left, and it has never slowed down, and it only becomes more and more beautiful, more and more intense and powerful and lovely and uplifting. And so, that's essentially why I wrote the book. There finally came a time where I was already speaking because the stories are unique. Even the dolphin story has been in guideposts. Millions and millions of people have read that story all over the world. It's been picked up. It's been on television. It's been in other books. But I have spoken, but I never wanted to write them all down. It all seemed too intimate, and I just didn't want to do it. And I didn't need to be a writer or want to be a writer or need anybody to think anything about me. I had no sense of that as a career, certainly, or even an ambition. And at the same time, my friends were encouraging me, and I felt like it really did have to be done. And one friend took it upon himself to plop himself down at my house. He came all the way from Australia and said he wasn't leaving until I wrote the book. So finally, I wrote the book, but I also truly felt it would be good to share with people this amazing connection that we all have. And it doesn't matter what religion or background you are. You do not have to change your religion or change your path. Our job is simply to make the most of the path that we're on and really know that we can have that greater connection with the divine if we want it.
What do you say to people who say they're not really sure if the guidance they're getting is from God or from their mind?
Well, yes, I love that question. I do a workshop. I'm going to be in Minneapolis soon doing a workshop. I've been doing it all over the world. I've been on a world book tour, and that question comes up over and over and over again. And in the workshop, here is what we talk about. First of all, the first clue is practice inner guidance. It's like an exercise that you do on a daily basis so that you really, really know that it's real. For a while, you will think it's from your mind and that you're making it up. So I might ask on any given morning, should I wear this outfit or that outfit? Now, does the divine care? I'm sure not. But sometimes I get this nudge, like wear the white outfit. So I put the white outfit on, and, it turns out that outfit's a little warmer than what I thought I needed that day, but a fluke storm comes up, and I'm warm and everybody else is cold. You just practice it every moment. And someone taught me a long, long time ago. She said when she changed the sheets, she would say, should I use the flowered sheets or the striped sheets? And I said, doesn't that seem too insignificant to be asking? I mean, heavens, you're asking God, do I change the sheets and put on flowers or striped? Who cares? And she said, but sometimes I get an answer. Sometimes I don't. But it's signifying to the universe, I'm listening. I'm with you. I care. I want to hear the answers. So by asking in the minutia of life, the daily details, it's like the practice session for inner guidance, and suddenly you'll get, should I go this way or that? Go left. I went left one day, and exactly on my right, a huge wreck occurred.
Right.
So I avoided that wreck. Suddenly I knew, whew, boy, glad I asked. But, then it becomes clearer. You begin to get the sense of what it feels like when your inner guidance is really kicking in and when it really matters. And you begin to listen more intently. The second thing is, that's the first key, is that you can ask, you can question it, you can say, I want to see a sign, I want to know if that's real. And that begins even more of the rapport, that asking for a sign, a clue. And there are many ways you can recognize your inner guidance, but those signs are one of them. And so that's the second aspect. So first is practice, and the second is to ask and question. And then the third really is to keep our vibrations high. One of the things I learned in Eckankar is that we can do a daily spiritual exercise only for about 20 minutes a day, but we can chant a word somewhat like meditation, only it takes us to a whole new level because it's a creative spiritual exercise. And the word that you're taught to use that anyone of any religion can use and people have used for centuries is the word Hu, H-U. And it's like it's an ancient name for God, but it's like the God in man in the word human, human. And H-U is pronounced Hu when you're singing or chanting it. You do that for about 20 minutes a day, but it's a very, very high vibration, and it takes you to a whole new vibratory level. So to be in rapport with Divine Spirit, you want to be where Divine Spirit lives. So to take time to do that, I'm sure you could pray each day or meditate each day, but this is what I do in order to raise my vibration. So that's the third thing, is to keep your vibration high. And then the fourth is to pay attention and listen, to really listen and pay attention too, because sometimes those signs are what you might see in the world, and things that really catch your attention, that's special. It's catching your attention for a reason, and you begin to pay attention. And so that's the fourth thing, to pay attention. And then the fifth thing that I would share is to recognize your guidance and acknowledge it. So acknowledging it with a grateful heart is in alignment with that spiritual law that whatever you put your attention on, you get more of. So when you acknowledge your guidance, you're putting your attention on it and you're grateful for it. That's the law of gratitude. And that will increase whatever it is that you gratefully put your attention on, you'll get more of in your life. So it's a way to clearly indicate that this is what you're looking for and this is what you want and this is your intent. And so that's the fifth thing, to recognize your guidance, acknowledge it when it's happening, and to receive it with a grateful heart.
You also gave a story in your book about guidance having a child. And it was kind of interesting because I'm listening to your 5 points here and I'm thinking of that experience. And it kind of caught you backwards, how that occurred. Can you tell that story quickly enough, just sort of how that also works? Because that's another form of guidance.
Story. That's an easy story because I had been told I could never have children. I had some medical issues when I was young, and one doctor refers me to the next, who refers me to the next, and all three of them had agreed you'll never be able to have children. And I thought, well, I'm a teacher, so that's okay. I have lots of young people in my life, and I never gave it much thought anyway. I was young, and then I had this experience where I got to help deliver the baby of a friend of mine who was my neighbor and the wife of a teacher that I worked with. And it was such a magnificent experience, this natural childbirth at home that she had. And I left there thinking, oh my gosh, I do want to have a child. I want to have that experience. And what that really is about is knowing that the gift is already given. But when we ask for it, that's the time that we can really receive it. And I broke down crying saying I wanted it. But it was perfectly in alignment with the guidance that you're talking about, where one day prior to that, very short while prior to that, I had been after school, stopped at a stoplight, and I hear a clear voice say, you will have a child before you are 30 and it will change your life forever. And I'm in my late 20s and not dating anyone seriously. I'm thinking, how am I going to have a child? Meet someone, get married, have a baby, and all of that's going to happen with me not being able to have children. And so what's it mean? It must mean a high school student. And then I hear it again. No, you will have a child before you are 30 and it will change your life forever. And so I discover after this natural childbirth experience that I am actually several months pregnant at this point, unbeknownst to me. I don't even find out I'm pregnant till I'm 6.5 months pregnant. And I have a beautiful baby myself, natural childbirth at home, and it is when I'm 29 years old. So the guidance was definitely when I least expected it. It was not a message that I expected at all. It was what I consider inner guidance of prophecy. It's a prophetic inner guidance, prophesying the future.
Yeah, because I believe, as you said, you had the natural childbirth experience after you got that message, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. Yes, I told the story backwards. You're right. I definitely had the experience sitting at the stoplight years before, like I'm, 26 or 27 years old. And then when I'm 29, I actually meet this man, get married, have a baby, and it all happened exactly as was prophesied. Before I was 30, I would have a child. But it took me completely by surprise, because it's as if your life has a direction that you would never be connected to if you didn't get in concert this this concert of relationship with the divine that you can have when you begin to follow your inner guidance. It is as if you're living your life on a daily basis saying, not my will, but thy will.
Ah.
And it is also not that you're giving up and not participating, but that you're being shown how to make the most of yourself, how to really live this life to the fullest and greatest that it can possibly be, even though you don't have a clue what that might be, even though you would never know. And that's what's so magnificent. It's like you want to discover who you really are. You want to know your fullest and greatest potential. You want to be able to fulfill it. That's what people are saying all the time, studying success courses and everything else. The way to it, from my perspective, really is get in concert with the divine. Open your heart to the inner guidance that's available to all of us. It's our birthright. It's your birthright. If it's your birthright and you suddenly discovered that you had inherited the world and all that's in it, wouldn't you want it? And yet that is, on an individual basis, exactly what it's like.
Incredible. Well, I think that's your stories are just remarkable. You clearly have had an extraordinary life with a lot of different changes. And I think that my feeling about inner guidance is that it's always a surprise, too. And there's a surprise element in things. And because of that surprise as the divine unfolds within us and in our outer life, that's really kind of the whole joy of soul, is it not?
It is. I hadn't actually thought of it that way, about it being a surprise. Sometimes it's not, but it's the most fun when it is.
Right.
When you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, that's where you were leading me. Who would have ever thought of that? And that's one of the ways that you can tell it is not your mind, because you would never have thought to go in that direction. And you know that with your conscious mind, you simply wouldn't have perceived it. You never would have had that inclination, and yet there you are. And you realize, wow, that really is part of the joy of soul. That's part of the joy of living, is knowing that at every moment, life can take a turn that is so outrageously cool that you could never have even imagined it.
Yeah, I sort of termed it getting in concert with your incarnational agreement. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, you agreed to come into this life at some level outside of this physical world. Mm-hmm. And when you come in, it is an adventure. I mean, you don't know much. I mean, I meet very few people who know everything that's going to happen in the next 5 years. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody like that, as a matter of fact, in this life. So,
well, we do continue to work toward our goals, but often even those goals turn out to be completely different than what we would have thought. And I think, that we think that we're supposed to live life like other people. And fortunately, some of those molds are being broken right now. Even the media is opening up to new models of life. We all know that it isn't now, Father knows best and all life is like the beavers. It's not the 1950s anymore, where everybody thinks that. But what's interesting about my book is this was happening. I was born in the 1950s and, lived in the 1950s, and that's the way I thought life was supposed to be. And boy, my life has not been like that at all. It's been outrageous and crazy at times, and it's just so cool and lovely and beautiful. I adore my life. I love it. I love all the adventures that I've had. And I've come out in a beautiful place. I'm very, very happy in my life. And I do feel it's that joy that we can all connect to, Jeffrey. I mean, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that and see that, we don't know what the next 5 years are going to be like. Our job is to do our best, put one foot in front of the other, but sure enough, Spirit will come along and do you one so much better than you ever dreamed if you just, stay open.
And that's to me is a very uplifting feature of the whole thing, is that there is that freshness that always comes in daily, or with any kind of situation that's going on in your life. And I love those surprises. And it's like, wow, I could have never. I find myself saying, like, wow, I could have never figured that out.
Yeah, it's true, absolutely. And there's something else I love too. I have learned a lot about myself and a lot about life and about philosophy inwardly through this process. And one of the stories that's in the book is about the morning that I sat down to do a contemplative spiritual exercise. I now knew about Eckankar, so I did these exercises every day, as anyone can do of any religion, as I said before. But I had joined Eckankar, and I was studying it. And I do this exercise, and I ask inwardly if there's one word that I can keep in mind to guide myself in every moment and remember who I really am spiritually, that I really am soul and a spiritual being, and that will really keep me on course. What is that one word? And I'm thinking maybe a word will come through like love or something like that, right? And or patience. Who knows what might come through? And I am quiet and I sit and I reflect, and the word that comes through is grace. And I think, I don't even know what grace means. Grace reminds me of a ballerina in a tutu, and, gracefully dancing. And I didn't know what that meant. It's like, grace is what you want me to keep in mind? And I'm thinking, I'm a high school teacher, so I'm thinking, okay, I'll look that up later. I'll do some research on it. I don't even know what that means. But interesting, that's the word I got. I knew for a fact that's the word I got. And I left to teach that morning, have my little daughter with me. I'm taking her to play school. And I have her in the back seat, and as we pull out onto the major highway, a big truck cuts me off, and I land in a ditch with the car. I'm still upright. I'm able to actually keep the car running and drive up the berm and out of the ditch, but I'm thinking, boy, when I catch up to that truck, I am going to give him what for, because, he threatened my life and my daughter's life, and I am just fuming. And by the time I catch up to that truck going up the hill, I am stunned completely as I see the truck. It's a big white truck, that's all I know. And as I pull up to the big white truck, I see that it has black letters on the side, and it says Grace. This is a Grace truck. GRACE are the letters on the side of that truck. And I have just gotten mad at a Grace truck. And I realized, all right. So the guy maybe didn't know he ran me over. I should be grateful that I'm alive. I should be full of gratitude and joy. I should be full of forgiveness. Grace would be graceful. Grace would be loving and kind, even in the face of difficulties. That's what grace means. And so I was taught dramatically that day. By the time I actually got up to the cab and saw the guy's face, I was grinning from ear to ear, and the guy's like, hi, and waving to me, and I'm waving to him. And he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't know what happened, and yet I do, and it seared that memory in my brain forever to try and respond gracefully in life to all things. And so I knew I was being taught step by step how to be a more spiritual, aware human being, able to live in this world that we all live in, but specifically for me, what would really help me. And so that individualization of the guidance, I think, is also really dramatic and really significant and really lovely to know that we have that to count on.
Wonderful. And we're in a very interesting time of year right now, because Eckankar, the organization, is having their national seminar in 12 days from this recording. And maybe you could just say a few words about that, since are you going to the seminar? I guess I should ask first.
Yes, I am going, and I will be presenting a workshop there, and it is on the 23rd, on Saturday the 23rd at 2 to 3:30, I believe. I had that in front of me. If you don't, give me a second. But what the workshop will focus on is all of the things that we've been talking about, but really give people a chance to acknowledge their inner guidance, to learn a little bit more about inner guidance. There's a great deal to be learned that we go into, but people can be from all walks of life. It's an Eckankar seminar, but that doesn't really matter. I think what really matters is that you learn how to apply the techniques and tips that you learn to your own life. So that is a very open session for everybody from 2 to 3:30, and you can learn more at eckseminars.org, eckseminars.org. It is at the Minneapolis Convention Center in Auditorium 3 from 2 o'clock on. It's free to the public. And that Saturday is very significant because right after that, for people who really want to explore their dreams and that sort of thing, there's a free spiritual experiences fair at 3:30 to 5:30. Again, open to the public, and in that same area in the Minneapolis Convention Center. And again, you can find out more at eckseminars.org. And that evening, you can actually hear the spiritual leader of Eckankar, Sri Harold Klemp, speak in the evening session at 7 p.m., which is a real highlight, a really significant gift to the public, and it is free to all of those new to Eckankar or guests. You just come in. You can actually download a pass if you want and learn more at that URL that I'm sending you to, the eckseminars.org. But if you just show up at the door and say that you're a guest and that you're new and you're interested, you are free and welcome to come.
Anne, thank you so much. That's wonderful. It's great information, and I've been to those seminars. They're fantastic. So I really want to thank you for taking the time today to speak about your wonderful book, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thanks. Well, let's just let people know, if you don't mind, that the book is, you can find out more about the book itself in its title. It's not Eckankar, it's innerguidancebook.org, innerguidancebook.org. And you can order it there too from Amazon or wherever you might like. But you can see a schedule of where I'm speaking too. So The information I gave you about the workshop, it's also listed there. But everywhere I'm speaking all over the world is listed there for people as well.
Wonderful.
And I have one other thing I wanted to share, Jeffrey, if I may. You know, when we were talking about Hue earlier, a place where people can go to find out how to sing the Hue, how to do that chant, is miraculesinyourlife.org.
Okay, and I'll have all these things in the show notes too, so they can always check on the Omni Art Salon website.
Great.
And get it there as well, so they don't have to memorize it.
Good. Good. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Jeffrey. Thanks.
Absolutely, and you have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.